Going live. Hello, my name's Heather. I'm with Open Knowledge. I'm here with Lucy Chambers. Lucy waves. And we're here to
Hi.
do a little bit of a Skillshare around photography. We know that we have a number of photo bugs in the world who are going to be at OkFest or at events around the world, and so we want to make it easier to have a conversation about why photography is important and how we can do that and what is that workflow and some tips and tricks. Now, everybody has different skills, and we know that with our skills, we're so much better if we do this together. So please know that we are not professional photographers. We are amateurs in the making, and we're here to try and figure out how we can all be amateurs together. And so while we're thinking about how do we, surely at OkFest or at your events, you should have somebody who's a professional. Whenever I run an event, I always have like a media team and some people who are just in charge of video or just in charge of photos, and deputizing people who want to be that and asking them for clear shots or setting up your shot plans ahead of an event is really good. People always do the standard model shots, like the ones where you're on stage and you have like 6 people and there's their PowerPoint behind them, and that's beautiful. But you also want to have the random moments shots. But what I like to do before an event is kind of make a list of all the kind of photos that I need to be able to plan. And so I think that's, and although we're talking about photography and the Skillshare of it, perhaps I'll talk about how to make photography part of your Skillshare plan for your event to make it successful, because a lot of organizations and funders and even your community, they won't get involved unless the story is clear and it's very presentable and it really kind of is inspiring. And so photos actually are probably one of the most top things to do that with. Video is long, so even though we're doing this video today, people might only watch like 3 minutes or so. So just know that photos can really kind of like give a moment and capture a moment, but also help people inspire to come. So that's our important emphasis on why photos matter. So Lucy, over to you. Tell us all about
Yay.
the photos. Do I have to
All
buy
about
an
the photos.
SLR? Because I don't want to own an SLR because it
No,
won't fit into my suitcase. And
no, exactly. So I did today's Skillshare based on tips and tricks that anybody could do, irrespective of their device. Particularly figuring that the majority of people would probably be shooting on a smartphone or something like that. So my tips and tricks today, again, I'm totally unqualified to do this. I am, however, a very enthusiastic amateur. I do have a nice camera, which is not an SLR. It is a Fuji X100S, which is very nice. But I have also taken, I have also taken an awful lot of my photos on a smartphone, both with Instagram and without. But I'm going to encourage you against the use of Instagram until later today. So yeah, I have prepared. I prepared a mini set of tips and tricks. I was going to ask for questions from the audience, but seeing as it's Heather and I, and we're going to be talking to people later, Heather is just going to bombard me with some random questions at some point, and I am probably going to talk until such point that happens.
there are people watching.
Heather, I don't. Great, wonderful. So I'm going to move over to start sharing my screen. So I believe that my face will disappear, but you're gonna start seeing the presentation that I put together. So now you can see Heather, and shortly you should be able to see my presentation. Heather, can you just confirm that you can see that? Paging Heather.
Oh, the mute. Google's edited me. Yes, I can see your screen, and it's fantastic. And Lucy, please go ahead.
Awesome. Okay, brilliant. So yeah, like I say, I am totally unqualified. To talk to you about this today. However, I did want to do a photography course when I lived in Russia very briefly. So I'm going to take you through a couple of my favorite photos and tell you about all of the things that my photography teacher told me off for doing when I was learning about this stuff, which I hope is useful. So quick overview of what we're going to do today. Just thinking a little bit about why you're taking the photo, because the type of photo that you take kind of, it seems obvious to say it, but whether you're taking kind of like street photography or kind of photojournalistic shots and trying to capture a moment, or taking something like a portrait, very definitely changes the way that you're going about something like this. I've come up with my kind of key tips, things that I find super useful, or the things that I learned from my lovely photography teacher, Masha, and some of my key don'ts. You will spot a couple of themes. So there's one key takeaway that I really want people to learn today. I suspect it will be relatively obvious what that is. Heather, seeing as you're here, I don't know if you're fielding questions from anywhere, but is there anything else that you would like me to cover today?
I am fielding questions, and the one thing I'd like you to cover is just at the end, just some key examples of photos that get leverage online. We can talk about that at the end, though. Awesome. It's not really a skill. It's not really about the art of taking photos, but it's more about the process around it, which I can talk about.
Super. Would love your input on that as well. Okay, brilliant. So just a little bit about, I've called it genres, but this is about the kind of the reason of why you're taking a photo. So if it's interesting to people, we can talk a bit about how to take pictures of really vain people. If you're talking about taking portraits, my interest, the thing that I care most about, is kind of photojournalistic shots, trying to capture some kind of action or activity or energy from a room in general. So typical kind of things that we might be talking about here, things like capturing a moment like the guy, the soldier jumping over the Berlin Wall as it was going up, where you have to be super patient in order to wait for the thing that you know is going to happen at some point. Are you taking pictures for marketing, some kind of key stock shot that you can use again and again and again, in which case you probably want to kind of think more about posing people. Portraits or group photos, or stock photos is always something that I never remember to do, but I think Heather mentioned right at the beginning. It's always good to have a kind of a list of things that you need to remember to take pictures of when you're at an event, which convey things about the setting that you're in, but aren't necessarily about the people, and you can take at any point just to make sure that at some point you can use them in terms of pretty things. So the orange one at the bottom is one that I took at the last OkFestival, actually, with all of the letters that came from the fantastic name badges. So I'm going to pause between slides. I'm under instruction to go relatively slowly. But Heather, is there anything that you would add to this point?
Yeah, the only thing I would suggest is that what are stock photos, and also don't forget about the public domain register, because there's all those free photos there, and our friends at Creative Commons have encouraged everyone to use CC BY. So when you're taking a photo, make sure you make it available that anyone can use, and searchable. In terms of like having why you take a photo, but just thinking about like other resources for where photos are. Go ahead.
Totally. And I think, yes, if anybody is not aware that is watching this, there is a particularly if you upload your pictures to something like Flickr, there is a very easy way that you can license your photos under an open license to make it clear how people can use them. And you can also search Flickr for photos that you can use in particular contexts. So if it's useful, we can also go through how to do that. Superb. So diving straight onto tips, because I think that this is some of the most useful things that I can impart. Tip number one, because irrespective of which device you are using, you can always improve how you do composition. So how you position your camera in order to capture particular aspects and put them in particular positions in the frame, affects the kind of energy and the mood and how beautiful the overall picture looks. So my number one tip for any type of photos ever is get close. In photography school, they pretty much ban you from using a zoom, and many kind of photography teachers will take down your zoom so that you can't use it. And the reason that they do that is both to kind of encourage you to get in on the action and be part of the pictures, but also like your camera just performs better irrespective of your the type of camera that you have, and the reason why is pretty kind of scientific. If you have a if you're closer, the camera can make better use of the available lights. You can have a I always get these the wrong way around. I think a larger aperture if you're using a posh camera, which means that more light hits your hits the sensor on your camera. And that means that you can take photos in worse light conditions, not needing to use a flash. You're more likely to get all of the kind of the intricacies. And I didn't manage to find an example for today because I really wanted to show you the same picture kind of taken from like really up close and from afar. Because it's not just a matter of getting a camera with a really fantastic, like really high resolution, and then just being able to kind of crop it and zoom in. It doesn't work like that. The actual the way that your camera performs is just different, and you kind of capture a different feeling if you actually get right up close. So the picture on the right is a friend of mine, really up close, and you can kind of see.
The picture on the left is a friend of mine. I think up close with consolation, right? You know, up close to a dangerous animal, that doesn't look like a dangerous animal. That's so good. Up close to the edge of a building, maybe not so good. Up close
exactly.
I just wanted to add some humor.
Heather,
but yeah,
Heather can deal with the exclusion of risk things that I am assuming too far. But yeah, broadly, if you're in a safe environment and it's relatively kind of cozy and happy, I would encourage you just to kind of get in there, get as close as you can. It's good practice in general. Some people will totally go away and be totally freaked out by it. But all in all, you get so much better pictures if you're in there with them. Okay, wonderful. I'm slowing down again, Heather. Any other points on that? No?
Okay, good. No, please go ahead.
Fantastic. So, second rule of composition that I was taught is that I and lots of other people think that each photo, particularly when we're talking about photographing scenes or photographing things like street photography or some descriptions, and not so less so when you're talking about portraits, although I really love portraits done like this as well, is it's really useful to think about what's in the foreground, what's in the middle ground, and what's in the background. And I think that the most, like my personal opinion is that the most interesting pictures are ones that include all of those three elements. So having something in, not necessarily like you won't get necessarily all of them in focus, but just to kind of draw the eye to particular parts of a picture. And I'm about to show you an example from my favorite Russian photographer called Maxim, who I think is probably the master of doing things, master of capturing scenes with this kind of staggered bits of interest at different points in the picture. Far better than I am capturing pictures of Rufus, our boss.
That is a stunning photo.
It's I like it. But yeah, that was my this was what I was going for when I took that picture of Rufus, and that was taken at the last OkCon in Berlin. So I think 3 years ago now, which is slightly terrifying. Yeah, so that's my kind of my second tip. I think I have one more on composition. Sorry, the composition and framing are similar, but I have a couple more tips about how to frame your pictures. Lots of people, when they're shooting, put the thing that they're trying to shoot right in the middle, and actually, like your eye, certainly when you're taking a rectangular picture, your eye is actually drawn to particular points of the frame. I'm probably not going to be able to explain this as well as this photo explains it, but actually the most interesting points from as far as your eye's concerned are these. I don't know, can you see my cursor, Heather, or does that not come up?
Yes, I can see your cursor.
Wonderful. So so your eye is actually drawn to points which are kind of a third in from both the sides and the bottom and top of your picture. So it's usually quite a good idea to put things in that position which are the most interesting, because otherwise you end up with quite a lot of dead space around them sometimes. So I think this picture, and I say thank you to my friend Annabelle who helped me come up with the examples last night. But this picture up here of this little boy, I think does this quite nicely, where he's basically set to the side of the picture, and he's got something. He's holding the camera in his hands, and he's got a nice little interesting hat. Yeah, I think it's just it ends up with pictures that I think, particularly when you're trying to convey, like this one is, that you've got an interesting background as well. It means that your eye can take into account something that's interesting behind them. I think it's really nice if somebody is walking in the picture, it kind of gives it a sense of movement as well. If somebody's walking across a frame and they're put right in the middle of a frame, it kind of looks a bit more static. But if they're kind of towards one side of it, you can feel the movement a bit more. And I have no idea why this works the way it does, but whenever I've tried to take pictures like this, they appear to work out a bit better. So yeah, did I explain that all right, Heather?
You did. I've heard the rule of thirds before, but I like how the examples really show that. I think that I've seen photos where focusing on the left-hand side is potentially a bad idea, because it's potentially a bad idea to always do it that way. I think that you need to have, think about different focal points, and if people find too many common patterns in photography, some of the best photos out there are the ones that have kind of reversed the pattern. And I'm also wondering, and this is like maybe completely on a tangent, but if I speak English and I read from left to right, but what about countries that read from right to left, right? Like Arabic, right? It'd just be really interesting to think about like how people digest that information. I'm totally not asking you to write your PhD on this right now, but I just, I guess I wanted to think, like, I like the rule of thirds, but I don't want us to get too stuck on that there are other techniques out there. And please go write your PhD.
Totally. And I think I probably didn't explain it incredibly well, in the sense that I think it's totally fine to have like, for example, if this little group here, if there were another group there, that would be absolutely fine. It's fine to have like multiple like points, but just the fact that your eye is drawn kind of to these powerful points on the picture. So if you're going to put something interesting in your frame, and two people are standing next to each other, then that's probably a good place to put them, because if the little boy's camera is right down here, for example, I'm hoping you can see my cursor, otherwise this is a bit weird.
Yes,
then the picture doesn't balance quite as well. So it's more about where you're positioning interesting parts of the picture than the fact that it has to be particularly kind of on the left or on the right. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Thanks. Yeah, wonderful. I think that's all I have to say about that one.
Cool. Thank you.
So,
No, I'm totally
great.
learning. I didn't realize that now I feel like I'm going to have to get like graphic paper and ask people to stand up and go, no, I'm going to hold a piece of graphic paper so I can see all the points. Okay, now you can go. Eventually,
It never has to be that.
I know, but eventually, as people train, that they'll see those points. But for novices like me, anyway, so the key tips were get close, background, foreground, middle ground, and last one, framing and roll of thirds.
Yes, and I can't remember what the first one that I came up with was. Background figure. Yes, that was it. Excellent. And if you haven't guessed already, that the thing that is going to kind of come up again and again and again is get close. So yes, wonderful. The next thing in terms of kind of framing is to look people like experiment with angles, but quite often if you're looking for pictures with a kind of a powerful angle of some description, it's useful to get on the same level as them to kind of look them in the eyes. You can see it particularly well if you're trying to take pictures, for example, of children. Any picture that you take of a child where you're kind of higher than them always ends up looking a bit weird, but some of the most powerful ones are certainly at the level where the photographer is rolling around on the floor, trying to capture the world as the child sees it and looking in the eyes of the kid. So yeah, I mean, I guess another tip is wear clothes that you don't mind rolling around on the floor in. But yeah, an experiment with angles. So it's not always right to look people in the eyes, but in terms of kind of the emotions that we feel when we're looking at a particular picture, that's not a bad idea. Pausing.
So I heard look people in the eye and roll on the floor. So as an event organizer, I'm always, focused on how can I move around and things. So I think it's really important to do that. And I think that in some looking people in the eye is not necessarily right. So it's always hard, right? But I love this photo. It really kind of, first of all, it's stunning. The color is stunning, but I love the fact that, you kind of feel that essence. And I don't expect to ever capture the essence of another human being in a photo, but we can always aspire to it. And I think that's, I like to think about whenever I think about good photos that they capture the essence or the spirit of a moment. And if you can look for those kind of magic spirit moments where it kind of takes your breath away, that if you can bring that into your photo with your excitement, that makes a good kind of look people in the eyes, but also not to be a soul stealer, but kind of look into their soul a little bit too, into the soul of a moment.
Exactly. And I think the other tip I was going, yeah, exactly. And obviously don't take pictures of people who believe that taking their picture steals their souls, because some people, like in some cultures, that is tradition, so just please have to stick to that.
Yeah, I know, very important. And also asking permission of humans. Like I specific about, may I take your photo? And I ask permission because I think that people feel like they're part of it. Also, not just asking permission, but also being mindful that some people, for example, children taking pictures of people's kids, maybe not a good idea. As well.
Definitely not without the permission of the parents in today's modern society. So yeah, make sure that you get appropriate kind of release rights and photo taking rights for whatever you do manage to take. So I think a tip that I didn't put in here, but it's also a favorite technique, as long as you're in company where that is acceptable, because in some contexts, such as conferences, such as OkFestival, where there's people who are more sensitive about people taking their picture, then you should definitely ask. But some of the best pictures that I've ever taken have definitely been ones where people don't know you're taking them. So if you can manage in a kind of quite a surreptitious way to take pictures where people are kind of relaxed and definitely themselves, I think they're definitely some of the best ones. So yeah, judge it by the situation, but if you trust that the people are going to be happy, that's definitely something, if you're brave enough to do it, to stick your nose right in there. Get them when they're talking, because they're usually in the moment, and won't pay attention to the fact that you're about to stick a camera in their face. Great. So, I mean, this is exactly the opposite tip to the one that I'm just about to give you, which is one where it's kind of about getting people excited, injecting energy, standing on tables, dressing people up, and posing people. Yes, I've got a couple of examples from Mozilla Festival, where we were. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Michael, for posing for us. But yeah, I think certainly for some of the stuff that School of Data does, which is where I work, if anybody watching this is not familiar with who I am, we do an awful lot with fancy dress, which does kind of relax people, either relax or supremely stress them out, hopefully broadly relax them. So yeah, kind of it works a bit as an icebreaker. People were very happy to kind of pose with Michael and kind of convey the fun and atmosphere of the situation. We did lots of kind of standing on tables and shooting from above, so that you kind of see what people were working on. And I think, yeah, it's different. It depends on the situation. When I was in Russia, we were doing lots of portrait photography in studios, where we actually had to kind of convince people to relax and be very kind of elegant and beautiful. And then it really matters that you're kind of calming and people are able to relax around you. For some reason, I was a strange foreigner that spoke funny pidgin Russian, so they kind of had no shame in front of me, which worked well. But I think in terms of energy, I think one of the things that I learned very quickly, particularly when I was photographing events, was to move a lot yourself as well. It's very easy to stand and be patient, like the guy waiting for the guy to jump over the Berlin Wall. But like, you're gonna get the most out of an event by moving and taking lots of pictures and deleting them later if they're not the ones that you want. Because yeah, otherwise you'll just end up with millions of similar pictures. Mm-hmm. So it's tiring, but it's definitely worth
I just wanted to interject a little bit. Something I learned from a photographer when I was in university was she had a book with her, like a little scribble pad, probably a little bit bigger than this, right? A little bit smaller than this, like half size. And what she would do is she'd write down her shots. And so she wrote down how she framed it and how she colored it and whatever, low light or whatever. She wrote all this down. But she also wrote down a description of what it was and the names of people who were involved, because I think that, when you're taking a photo of somebody, they're like, hey, can I have that photo later? Or, hey, when you're going to put it in a blog post or whatever, having a book that says who that person was. 'Cause I know that's Jonathan and Michael. Jonathan's a Mozillian from Toronto, so that's how I know him. I'm more than certain it's Jonathan. If I'm wrong, I totally owe somebody a beer, which is fine. But it's Jonathan and Michael, and so I know that, but nobody else would know that unless we had it written down somewhere. So always having a book of who's who is good. It also helps you improve and helps you, instead of, as you were saying earlier, take lots of photos versus taking purposeful photos, right? Definitely, I find that some of the photos I take, you just like happen and trip on this great moment. But just a thought. But anyway, please go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, I think that's a super, super important one. And also so that you can email people them later. A lot of the photos, I actually did a dissertation when I was living in Russia on labour migrants, and me taking pictures of them was actually some of the only ways that they could show their families their new life in St. Petersburg. So they always wanted a copy of anything that I took for them. So yeah, take good pictures, people will be flattered, you'll make friends, the world will be a better place. You follow the logic type stuff. We can talk very briefly about lighting. Lighting is probably the single most important thing in photography, because clearly that's how it works. Basically, it's a couple of things that I would just recommend in terms of lighting. I try and use natural light wherever possible. If you're taking pictures outside, clearly soft lighting is always more flattering than hard lighting. So if you're trying to take pictures outside, you will find it easiest to get flattering pictures of people around dawn or dusk. Pictures taken in the middle of the day will be harder because the light is just harsher. So particularly if you're taking pictures of vain people, you should try and get it in a kind of a sunset shot. There's a couple of other tips, I guess, in terms of lighting. I try not to use a flash ever. I just think it's I just think it bleaches my my photos. I don't like it. Some people manage to use it a lot more successfully than I do. Photographers quite often have flashes that are pointing backwards to illuminate off the room, and then rather than pointing at the subjects themselves. So if you can find a way to illuminate the surroundings rather than actually flashing directly the thing that you're trying to take a picture of, it works better. If you're, again, get close, because your camera will find it easier to react to the light. And last one, I guess, is a tip that I learnt in emergency situations. If you're really, really struggling to get a picture of somebody and the light is quite low, and you've only got something like a window or something that you need to have their face lit. You can sit them in front of the window and hold a piece of white paper in a position that catches the light from the window in such a place that it's out of frame. So yeah, it reflects back. It's quite subtle. It's something that you are more likely to have around than a proper reflector, which is what full photographers would carry around with them. And yeah, broadly, it just helps with it. It won't create a full kind of floodlit football field effect, but it does help a little bit. And it also helps to get rid of, sometimes when you're taking a picture of people and the light is quite strong, and they get a kind of funny dark shadow under their nose where the light is cutting it off. Holding a piece of paper under somebody's face also helps to kind of soften things like that, awkward facial feature shadows. So again, with zero equipment, that's something that I would suggest.
That's a super cool trick with the paper, Lucy. That's a super cool trick. The blazing light of the sun, I think it's always good to, what I learned from one of the photographers was to have the sun behind you as all possible, instead of in the frame. So if the sun's in the frame, your frame will be distorted, right? If you want your frame distorted, great. But just be aware that the blazing sun is also can also ruin a photo. I do have a question about how do you, this is from our colleague Mariki, she's asking, how do we take photos of speakers, plenary speakers? It's hard to do that in terms of distance and light. So versus having somebody on stage taking photos, how do we capture somebody when you're in an audience? What are some tips that you have on that one?
I have a point in the what not to do slightly about this. I'm guessing Marika's talking about also, because actually taking pictures of people on stage, particularly when they're doing presentations, is quite difficult.
It is.
Because the PowerPoints that they have is quite bright, particularly if they're talking with a PowerPoint. So actually I can skip forward to that if that would be useful, and we'll just jump to stuff that we shouldn't do. So one of the things, because we're talking about light, that it's super helpful to avoid is overexposing your picture. So here's an example that I took. of exactly this phenomenon, where basically the presentation is totally washed out because it's really, really bright, and the rest of the frame is kind of a bit darker. So your phone is trying to compensate. This was taken on my phone. And I think I did, however, when we were in Helsinki, managed to take some relatively good pictures of people on stage, which I don't have with me, which I don't have as part of this presentation. But I don't know, I might just quit the presentation for a second and go back to Hangout and stop screen share. I'm just going to stop screen share. Okay, so I'm back. It's my face. But the single most helpful thing, I think, is basically, I'm shooting with an iPhone. Quite a lot of other phones do this as well. But I'm sure some people will be aware that if you hold on a particular point in the screen, it will do light metering based on that point. Oh. So basically, what I was doing in Helsinki was focusing. I was calibrating the where it was metering the lights on the presentation. So basically saying, focus on this, judge how bright to make this picture based on where the presentation is, because that's the brightest point in the in the frame. Because the general principle is it's far better to underexpose a picture than to overexpose it. So if you tell it, what's the brightest thing, focus on this bit, touch this, then you'll always be able, you may have to do a bit of photo editing afterwards and a piece of software to bring out the extra detail because the other parts of the picture will be too dark. But it's far easier to do it that way, because if something is overexposed, you can't get the detail back. So I hope that helps, Marika.
That's super. I also did not know that about light metering. I feel like I just got schooled. Now, we're 30 minutes in, Lucy, and I know you have a bunch of tips for us, so why don't we proceed on those?
Let's go back.
I'm really super excited to learn that. I know that, as I said, we certainly want to capture the best of all the events, and it's pretty hard when we're like running around like crazy people trying to do that. So hopefully all these tips are helping other folks who are watching now or later. Go ahead.
I hope so. And I think
selfishly I'm learning, so yay. I'm hoping other people do too. Okay, keep going, please.
So my tip number 5, before we move on to things that you shouldn't do, is use a tripod wherever possible. I mean, clearly that's not always possible, but particularly when you're shooting in low light conditions, the speed at which your shutter speed is a lot slower, so you're more likely to get blurry pictures. And I found an awesome tip last night for if you don't have a tripod, being able to make one out of a paper clip. So similar to my tip with the paper, if you don't have a tripod and don't have a posh one that you can carry around with you all the time, make one for yourself with a paper clip, and then if you need to film anything or keep your camera in a position for a long time, you've got a tripod, which is great. Use trees, use your friend's shoulders, use tables or bricks that are jutting out from strange places, anything to balance your camera. But it's super useful to have something there in case you need it. So yeah, that would be my suggestion. And
I'll share this if you have in the chat, but no cutting trees and getting us arrested in Berlin for those of you that are doing there.
Yeah, don't bring
no trees will be harmed. And I know that my colleague Neil as well. Neil, my colleague, and I are big forest and tree friends, so we're just going to protect the trees. Keep going. I'll share the link here. Thanks, Lucy. That's a great tip.
If you bring a tree to OkFestival, it needs its own ticket. Just saying. So.
Great.
So a couple of things on avoiding mistakes. I don't have a huge number of examples in here, but just wanted to kind of whiz through quickly because I unfortunately delete most of the pictures which I consider bad, so I didn't have a huge number of things which caught myself doing these bad things, but I definitely do them. This is my favorite, like number one thing that my photography teacher used to tell people off for doing. It's not always called the Posh Spice Monster. I call it the Posh Spice Monster because I always, confession, did used to be a Spice Girls fan when I was small. And basically this syndrome is things sticking out of places that they shouldn't be. And I think that this picture of Posh Spice, which is actually her elbow sticking out from behind her head, makes her look like she has a pig's ear. So just particularly when you're positioning people, there's another, like, it's quite common to have people stand in front of monuments or something to convey where they are. So if they're standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, quite often they end up looking like the point of the Eiffel Tower is sticking out the top of their head. It's just kind of something to be aware of, like, think about what's in the background as well as what's in the foreground. So I call it the Posh Spice Monster. Other people call it the Eiffel Tower syndrome. Just think about it, basically. Everybody does it at some point, but don't ruin a great picture by forgetting.
And don't be Posh Spice either. Like, really, look how she's situated. Anyway, keep going.
It's unfortunate. It did perplex me for quite a lot of my childhood exactly what this thing sticking out of her head was. And I've come to the conclusion that it is her elbow, but you never know. Wonderful. So you guessed it. Thing to avoid, number 2, being too far away. You just lose all of that atmosphere. I didn't put an Okapi in this, but in order to drive home the message, get close. That's basically, I think, the second thing that I wanted to get across. Unwanted blur. So I did have a whole section, like, sometimes you want blur. I'm going to quit my presentation again, just to take you to a. I think
Blur is a really great band, like from England.
Yeah.
Not getting photos, great as a band. Okay, that's actually not a bad photo though. I like it.
Exactly. So I think it depends what you're trying to do, right? So blur can be very artistic. It can be very kind of purposefully done. I think particularly if you're trying to. I thought this conveyed pretty well, that if you're trying to kind of keep the thing that you care about in focus while blurring out the background, you've got to move at the same speed as the thing that you're trying to take the picture of. But in general, blur is bad, so make sure that you're less likely to blur a picture if your lighting is right, if you're holding your camera steady, things like that. If you are shooting on a camera that has the ability to change the shutter speed, make the shutter speeds a lot faster. I had a couple of pictures, I can't remember whether I put them in, of I was taking some pictures. This is my photo stream of my dog, and she was jumping for bubbles.
What's your dog's name, Lucy?
Her name is Matilda.
Matilda. Okay.
But this is Matilda, and she's jumping for bubbles. And the reason I was able to take these, that's not the right one. That's just my family. Never mind. And jumping out of grass. And the reason I was able to take them was purely because I managed to whack the shutter speed right down. Sorry, that's not my photo stream anymore. Never mind. That's OKFs. Great. So yeah, blur can be good. It can be used artistically, but you don't necessarily always want it. So yeah, overexposure we've already talked about. We've talked a bit about how to avoid it on a smartphone by metering. If you've got a proper camera, there are other ways to do it. You can change sometimes the exposure levels, which I'm happy to talk about if people are shooting on proper cameras. And then the final bit is kind of avoid chopping bits off. So my photography teacher always used to tell us off if we left out some of these kind of elbow or something, you can always crop later. So it's far better to try and include an entire entity of the person that you're trying to capture, and then crop it later if you decide that you're not going to need all of it. But it's really frustrating to have taken an almost brilliant picture, and then to work out, particularly as Heather told me off for earlier, that you've chopped the top of somebody's head off. That's just really frustrating. So while I'm telling you to get really close, do avoid particularly chopping parts of people's faces off. So stand far enough back to do that. So those are my main tips. I had a couple of final tips, which was Instagram it later. I know that Instagram does make things... Sorry, go for it.
I did have another tip regarding taking photos of people. Not only should you ask them, but loading photos of unattractive photos of people, if you caught them in a moment where their mouth is full of food, just being really respectful of, not everybody likes poor photos, right? So there's a point where you want to capture people in their nicest moments as best you can, right? So if someone's crying, maybe not a great time to take a photo at an event, perhaps let them be. Just like, I know it sounds really soft and kind of thing, but I think that the photo, capturing a moment, but also making sure that it's the beautiful moment too, helps people look great. It's a hard thing to do. I don't think there's any science behind it, but I think that good photographers only release photos that respect the people they're taking the photos of. So don't
stress that I did not. Yeah, I should stress that I did not ask the permission of my puppy to post those photos. They're not the most flattering things that that I've ever taken, but she's just going to have to lump it. But generally, yes, you should ask her permission to post.
Matilda, can I take your photo? Please go ahead.
Wonderful. So yeah, final tips. Instagram it later. Lots of people take pictures directly through the Instagram app because it makes, like, you get nice soft light, and you get to put them through filters and everything looks really nice. There's nothing more frustrating than actually wanting the kind of clear original picture, but you can, because I also love Instagram. I confess, I'm sorry. But you can always upload and apply the filters later. So don't kind of compromise your original image quality by just Instagramming it automatically and only having that copy. I don't know whether Instagram now takes kind of another copy so that you don't just have the square version, but I would recommend it. And get close. I can't stress it enough. That's the single biggest thing. Most photos are genuinely improved by getting a little bit closer.
Right.
So that's it. There's a couple of links on here which I think were super helpful when I was doing my research for this last night, about kind of general photography tips, and some lovely an article about Henri Cartier-Bresson, which is probably one of the greatest street photographers that ever lived, and about how he kind of captured the mood on the street at the time that he was taking pictures. But that's pretty much all I've got to say to you. All I wanted to say is that, it's pretty simple, but take lots of pictures, because we would love to see loads of fantastic experiences from OkFestival, and I think we will probably have something like a photo pool or something to kind of capture if people are taking them from the community. Please take them, and please share them with us in whatever is the most appropriate mechanism.
Fantastic. So Lucy, are your slides anywhere? Can we share that with anybody?
They are indeed. I will send you the link after this, and we can put them on the wiki page or
sure.
whatever.
So I did want to say, I did want to say thank you so much for preparing it, and I think any Skillshare that's done is certainly important to be able to like learn as you go too. So even if you are sharing a Skillshare, I think it's good to learn. It sounds like you did some learning last night in terms of how to frame it, Lucy. I think that's really helpful. I think that a couple of key things that I think for any event, whether it be OkFest or any event, is to that I got not just from how to take a photo, but the work around it. So 1, plan your shots. 2, edit if you can. 3, you know, figure out what your storage is going to be and what you're going to do with the photos afterwards. So having kind of a plan. Are you going to upload those to Flickr? Are you going to share them all with Creative Commons? Please say yes. If you're not, you know, just having, if you're a professional photographer and this is how you make your money, respectfully, you know, just share them back, share the link back with folks. I always think about whenever I go to art shows or anything out there in the real world, I take a lot of photos because I use those photos later in blog posts. So I took a photo of a sticky note, which I use frequently. I have another photo that I took of just letters, like a big pile of letters too. Lucy, we should compare our letter pile.
We should.
And you know, just having those kind of your own stock photo file is really great. For organizations, having a stock photo file as well of, you know, things that you can share back that represent the community helps with writing blog posts or special reports or what have you. But more importantly, it's about kind of building the spirit, and so having that kind of archive piece of it is important. Now I know there's a lot of, you have an iPhone and I have an Android. With Instagram, with Android, you can literally go through the files of your Android and pull out all the Instagram photos and save them on your computer. I recommend backing up your photos. I know it sounds like, oh God, that's a lot of work, but I mean, backing up your photos and putting them on your computer in case you lose your phone. I've had friends who've lost family photos. It's really important to have those, but it also means that if you back it up and you put it on your computer, there's a very good chance you're going to put it on Flickr and Skillshare and share it with Creative Commons license. So, you know, taking the photos is only one step. It's really important, an important step, but don't forget about the whole arc of it if you can, because everyone's a storyteller.
They are indeed.
Lucy, any Creative Commons, any comments to close off?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that I would add was that if anybody is going out and considering buying a camera, the only piece of advice, there are a couple of pieces of advice that I would give you. One is, I think I mentioned it earlier, but don't get distracted by the pixel counts. That's not the most important thing with a camera. Most modern cameras that you can buy, the minimum resolution that most of them have is going to be kind of like 4 megapixels, which is enough for most. Kind of like, even if you're printing kind of A4 size, you very seldom needs anything better than that. I think the reason I was bought this as a present, and I really, really love it, and I think one of the most important things about it is that it's small and I can take it with me everywhere. So while it is lovely to have a digital SLR, I actually have taken far more pictures since I've had this relatively small and compact camera because I have it with me all of the time. It handles light incredibly well. I think that's the thing that's way more important to take into account than the kind of maximum number of megapixels that it can handle. And yeah, elsewise I don't have a huge amount more wisdom that I'm legitimately allowed to share on this topic.
Super. Lucy, I just want to say thanks so much for sharing your tips and guidelines. As I said, I did learn something today myself. I've also asked on Twitter, you know, for tips on apps, because I know there's some really great apps out there for iPhone and for Android, and I want to be as software agnostic as I can. I'm a total Android user, but I do have iPhone. I do have some Apple products that I take photos with occasionally too. So just knowing a list. So if you have that, just add them to Google Plus or tweet us back. And let us know. Those would be super awesome. And thanks again. And if you are not attending OkFest, don't forget that there's events happening around the world at any time. And having a great photo is something that we'd like to share back at OkFest, at Open Knowledge, to be able to tell and share your story. So thanks again. And Lucy, have a great day in Berlin.
Yeah.
Go Will Germany.
I was asked,
sorry.
I was asked, oh yes, World Cup.
2 hours to game.
I was just Heather, one question. I was just asked which camera I was using, and the answer is a Fuji X100S, which is very lovely. So yes, that's the final question that I just got pinged on.
Super. So we're talking camera models too for all you people who are not traveling internationally and can pack rat, or the photo hogs. Anyway, super, super. Okay, so please do share your skills on the Hangout, and thanks again, Lucy. I really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks for organizing.